Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive.
You bet.
Today, we're tackling Meister Eckhart.
Oh, Eckhart. He's, something
You
else.
shared some of his writings, right?
Yeah.
Along with some modern analysis.
Yeah, I did. I thought it would be right up your alley, with your interest in,
Oh, absolutely. I'm fascinated already. His ideas are so profound.
They really are. He doesn't shy away from the big questions.
No, he doesn't. The nature of God, meaning of existence, spiritual transformation.
All of it.
One thing that really jumped out at me was his take on the image of God in humanity.
Yeah, that's a big one for him.
It's rooted in Genesis, of course, but he brings in this whole other layer from Trinitarian theology.
Right. So you've got that familiar idea, humans made in God's image.
Right.
But then he connects that with the Trinity, specifically the Son being the image of the Father.
Okay, I'm following.
And it's not just like a similarity. For Eckhart, the Son is generated by the Father, but he's also identical to him.
Whoa. So if our intellect is supposed to be made in the image of God, does that mean, are we already divine? Or is that like just potential, not our current state?
That's a great question. And it gets right to the heart of what Eckhart's saying. He's suggesting that our intellect, our ability to reason and understand, it's not just like God's. It actually has the potential to be identical to it.
Wow.
Think of it like a mirror, a perfect mirror, right? It reflects the image standing before it perfectly.
Okay.
In the same way, Eckhart's saying that the source of an image is fully present within that image.
Like that.
He writes, the image is in its source, and the source is in the image.
That's a powerful concept. It's not about striving to be good enough for God. It's about recognizing that we already have this connection.
Exactly, that inherent connection.
But if that's true,
Yeah.
how do we actually experience this union with the divine?
Well, that takes us to Eckhart's emphasis on detachment, letting go. He talks a lot about self-renunciation, denying our ego, our desires.
Detachment.
Yeah. And he uses this analogy of an equal exchange. The more we let go of our own will, our preoccupations, the more room there is for the divine to enter.
It's like you can't fill a cup that's already full.
That's
right?
perfect. Exactly. And Eckhart gives us, some specific practices to help us create that space. Inner detachment is key, obviously, and not seeking personal gain from our actions.
He has this quote, I think it was one of his most famous ones, about how God doesn't give us gifts just to possess and enjoy. It's about preparing us for the ultimate gift, which is himself.
Powerful, right?
But that raises the question, how do we actually live that way? I mean, detaching from material things, sure. But what about our emotions? Or even our sense of self? Is that what he's advocating for?
You've hit on something really important. To apply Eckhart's teachings in our daily lives, we need a lot of self-awareness.
Yeah.
And a willingness to be really honest about our motivations.
Yeah, it's not easy.
No, it's not. And you're right, it's not just about possessions. Eckhart's talking about detaching from emotional attachments, too, that need to be in control, even our fixed ideas about who we are.
Okay, yeah, that is radical. I mean, isn't there a risk of becoming passive, like disengaged from the world? How do we balance that detachment with our responsibilities in life, our commitments?
It's a valid concern, absolutely. But Eckhart's concept of detachment, it's not about becoming indifferent or inactive, He's not saying we should abandon our obligations.
Right.
It's more about a shift in perspective. It's about acting, but from a place of inner freedom, not driven by our ego's desires or fears.
So it's less about what we do and more about why and how we do it.
Precisely. And that actually leads us towards exploring his idea of living without why.
Okay, yeah.
But before we get there, I think it's worth touching on how Eckhart views suffering. He actually suggests that misfortune can be a path to greater peace.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. It's not exactly our usual way of thinking about things, is it?
No, it's certainly not. It's not about seeking out suffering or romanticizing it or anything. It's about how we respond to it.
Okay.
Imagine someone facing misfortune, but they remain unmoved internally. Their inner peace isn't disturbed because their foundation is in something deeper, more permanent than just, changing circumstances.
I get that. I can see how clinging to comfort, to security, makes us vulnerable. If we build our foundation on something deeper, maybe we're better equipped to face challenges.
Exactly. And Eckhart, he uses this bold analogy. He says a truly just person would actually rejoice in misfortune more than in their own life.
Wow. That's that's a challenging concept. How can someone find joy in suffering?
It's not about, the surface level. Eckhart's pointing to the potential for a level of detachment that goes beyond the duality of pleasure and pain.
Hmm.
It's about reaching a state of surrender where even suffering can be a source of spiritual growth. And this reminds me of another central concept, the ground of the soul.
Okay, yeah.
Imagine the ocean, the vast depths of the ocean. The surface is always churned up by waves,
Right.
but the depths, they remain still, connected to everything. That's kind of a metaphor for Eckhart.
For the ground of the soul.
Exactly. It's that spark within us, untouched by time and space, yearning to reconnect with the divine source.
It's like he's saying there's a part of us that's already perfect, whole,
Yeah.
connected to something so much bigger than ourselves.
Yes. And he describes this spark as seeking not just the Trinity, but the very source of being itself, something beyond our usual ways of understanding.
That ground of the soul, it really resonates with me. It's like there's this deeper reality within each of us, always there, waiting to be discovered. But how do we access it?
Well, that brings us to Eckhart's idea of the birth of God within us. He uses this really striking image, God giving birth to his son within our souls.
So it's not about becoming like Christ, but experiencing that same divine birth within ourselves.
You got it. And he challenges our linear view of time. Eternity isn't something that happens after we die. It's a dimension we can access now within ourselves.
So we can tap into this eternal dimension within our own being.
That's what Eckhart's saying. He even writes, if we are to receive from him in this way, then we must be established in eternity, raised above time.
That's fascinating. It's through this eternal lens that we can perceive the divine birth taking place within us.
Yes.
I'm really curious to hear more about this idea of the divine birth within. What are some of the practical steps or approaches Eckhart suggests?
Before we get into that, let's connect this to Eckhart's famous phrase, live without why.
Okay, yeah, I've heard that one.
This is where his ideas become really challenging. And I think you'll find this particularly interesting given your earlier questions about, reconciling detachment with action.
I'm all ears.
It's a phrase that, it sparked a lot of debate over the centuries, even today. But there's this modern scholar, John Connolly, who explored it in detail.
Oh yeah, Connolly. I've read some of his stuff.
Yeah, and his analysis, it really sheds some light on what Eckhart might have meant by living without why.
So what was Connolly's take?
Well, he argued that Eckhart, he's not rejecting intentions or actions themselves,
Okay.
It's the motives behind them that he's critiquing. It's not about being passive or indifferent to the world.
So it's less about becoming a hermit and more about examining the why behind our actions.
Exactly.
Which ties back to the idea of detachment, right?
You got it. It's about shifting our perspective, moving away from acting out of self-interest or the expectation of reward.
But if we're not supposed to act for rewards, then what should motivate us? I mean, this idea of living without a why, it's kind of paradoxical, isn't it? We always have reasons for our actions, right?
But Eckhart is suggesting we act from a deeper place, from a profound alignment with what he calls the divine will. It's a radical shift in how we approach everything in life.
It reminds me of what you said earlier about the just person rejoicing in misfortune. That seems strange at first, but now I'm starting to see how it connects to this idea of living without why.
That's a great connection. When we let go of our attachment to outcomes, when we surrender to a power greater than ourselves, even suffering can lose its grip on us.
Right.
It can even become a source of wisdom, of growth. It's not about seeking out suffering, but about transforming our relationship to it.
That's definitely a challenging idea, but it also feels incredibly liberating somehow.
Well,
It's like Eckhart is offering a path to a deeper level of peace and freedom than we can even imagine.
that's the heart of it, I think. He's calling for a complete surrender of the ego, a willingness to dissolve into what he calls the divine ground, the source of all being.
This ground metaphor, it's so powerful. We were talking about the ground of the soul earlier being like the depths of the ocean, a still point amidst all the chaos.
Yeah.
But it seems like Eckhart sees this divine ground as being even more fundamental than the traditional concept of God.
He's definitely pushing the boundaries of traditional theological language. Remember, he was condemned as a heretic in his own time.
Right.
But he uses the image of the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, not just as a doctrine, but as a a living reality that we can experience.
So it's almost like he's saying, we begin to find the Trinity, this source of all being reflected within our own depths.
Yeah.
But how do we even begin to access this?
That's where the idea of the birth of God within comes in. It's this really provocative image Eckhart uses, God giving birth to the Son within our souls. He's suggesting it's not about us trying to become like Christ. It's about that same divine birth happening within us.
That's incredible. It sounds like a mystical experience almost. Is that what he's pointing to?
Eckhart's writings are full of these descriptions of mystical experiences, encounters with the divine that are beyond words. The ground of the soul, the spark of the divine, the birth of God within. These are all attempts to point to experiences that are ultimately ineffable.
So it's like he's trying to give us a language for something that's beyond language.
Exactly. And he does this through, powerful metaphors and imagery, challenging our conventional ways of thinking, like the idea that we have to lose ourselves to find ourselves, or that true freedom comes through surrender.
These are such counterintuitive ideas. They challenge everything our ego tells us to strive for.
That's why Eckhart's teachings can be so unsettling, but also so liberating. He's calling for a complete reorientation of our values, our priorities, a radical shift in perspective.
But if his vision is so radical, how did he reconcile that with the more traditional aspects of Christianity?
Remember, Eckhart was a Dominican priest.
No.
Deeply immersed in the Christian tradition.
Yeah.
For him, true spirituality isn't about escaping the world. It's about transforming our experience of it.
So it's about integrating these profound mystical insights into the way we live our everyday lives.
Exactly. And he doesn't shy away from the practical implications of his teachings. He actually emphasizes the importance of living an ethical life grounded in virtue.
So it's not just about having mystical experiences, it's about embodying those experiences in our actions.
He sees virtue as a natural outflow of a heart that's united with God. It's not about following rules out of fear, but about cultivating inner qualities like compassion, humility, generosity.
Those would certainly make the world a better place. But how do we cultivate those qualities? I mean, it's easy to talk about being compassionate, but living it out is another story, especially when life gets tough.
Eckhart would say cultivating those virtues, it's not something we do through willpower alone, It's about aligning ourselves with the divine will, letting go of our ego-driven desires and becoming instruments of that divine purpose. It's about creating that space within for the divine to work its transformative magic.
It sounds like he's saying that true transformation comes from a deeper source than our own efforts.
You're getting it. It's about recognizing that true change comes through grace, a gift freely given. Our part is to prepare ourselves to receive that gift.
So it's not about becoming passive, but about aligning ourselves with a power greater than ourselves.
Precisely. And that alignment can lead to a profound sense of peace and freedom, even amidst life's challenges. It allows us to experience a level of serenity that's independent of external circumstances.
That's a beautiful idea. But I still wonder how we reconcile this idea of living without why with the demands of our everyday lives.
That's a question each of us has to grapple with, I think, on our own spiritual journey. There's no one-size-fits-all answer. But Eckhart's teachings, they offer us a different way of being in the world.
I love that. It's not about finding the perfect answer, but about being open to a different way of living.
Exactly. Eckhart invites us to question our assumptions, challenge our limiting beliefs, and be open to the transformative power of divine grace.
That openness, it seems like the first step towards recognizing that divine spark that's already within us.
That's it. That recognition is the beginning of true spiritual awakening. It's a moment of liberation, a glimpse of the infinite potential that lies within each of us.
And that potential for transformation, that's what makes Eckhart's teaching so compelling, even centuries later.
You're right. He's pointing to a possibility for a life grounded in something deeper and more lasting than the fleeting pleasures and pains of the world, a life of meaning and purpose.
But wouldn't a life lived in perfect alignment with the divine will look pretty different from the way most of us live now?
You're bringing up a crucial point. How do we navigate the world while holding this awareness of the divine within?
So how did Eckhart think we could, bridge that gap
Mm.
between mystical awareness and everyday life?
Well, he does give some practical guidance. He emphasizes mindfulness a lot. He
Okay.
talks about, being present in each moment, whether we're at work or connecting with others, or even just appreciating the beauty of nature.
Finding the sacred in the ordinary moments.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. And bringing that awareness of the sacred into everything we do. Remember his phrase, live without why.
he keeps coming back. It does seem to suggest a way of being free from those ego-driven motives, expectations.
It does, and it's a phrase that's resonated with so many people, but it's also often misunderstood, I think.
In what way?
Well, sometimes people interpret living without why as a call to passivity or indifference towards the world.
So he wasn't saying we should, become apathetic, check out of life.
No, definitely not. He was talking about a different way of engaging with the world, one grounded in love and surrender.
So less about what we do, more about the energy and intention we bring to our actions.
Exactly. It's about letting go of our attachment to outcomes, surrendering our need to control every little detail.
Right.
It's about trusting that a greater power is working through us and for us, even when we don't fully understand it.
It takes a huge leap of faith, doesn't it? A willingness to let go of our ego's grip on things. It makes me think of Eckhart's emphasis on virtue. We're talking about compassion, humility, those qualities earlier. They don't seem to come naturally to most of us.
Eckhart would say those virtues are an expression of a heart that's aligned with the divine. He doesn't see them as, rules to follow out of fear, but as qualities that flow naturally when we're connected to that deeper source.
So it's like they're already present within us, just waiting to be uncovered as we let go of our ego's grip.
That's a great way to put it. He believed that as we cultivate a deeper connection with the divine, these virtues will naturally emerge in our actions, our interactions. It's not about striving to become virtuous, but about remembering who we truly are, expressions of that divine source.
I'm struck by how Eckhart emphasizes that everyone has access to this divine potential.
Yeah.
It's not just for monks or priests.
But that was incredibly radical for his time. He was
Yeah.
challenging the existing power structures by suggesting that direct experience of the divine was available to everyone, regardless of social standing or religious affiliation.
It's a truly democratic view of spirituality.
Absolutely. And he believed that this direct experience of the divine could lead to a more just and compassionate world.
Because when we recognize that divine spark within ourselves, we're more likely to recognize it in others too, right?
Exactly. He saw a clear link between mystical insight and ethical action. He believed true spirituality leads to a transformed heart. And that transformation would inevitably manifest in how we treat one another.
So it's not just about seeking personal enlightenment. It's about making the world a more loving, more just place.
Exactly. He believed that true spirituality is other-focused. It's about extending compassion, kindness to all beings, regardless of their differences.
That's a powerful message for us today as we navigate a world that often feels so divided, so disconnected.
It is. Eckhart's teachings, they remind us that true unity begins within ourselves. And as we cultivate that inner connection with the divine, it naturally extends outwards to encompass all of creation.
This whole conversation has been mind-blowing. I feel like we've only just, scratched the surface of Eckhart's philosophy.
Oh, his work is so rich, so multi-layered. It's a treasure trove of spiritual wisdom that continues to inspire and challenge us centuries later.
I'm left with this sense of awe at the depth and beauty of his vision, and a renewed sense of possibility. Like if we can tap into this divine spark within, maybe we really can make a difference in the world.
That's a beautiful takeaway, and I hope you, our listener, are feeling that same sense of wonder and possibility, too. As you continue exploring Eckhart's work, remember what we discussed about the ground of the soul. Eckhart's vision goes even deeper than traditional concepts of God. What might that mean for your understanding of your own being and the potential for spiritual experience?
That's a great question to leave our listeners pondering. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the mystical world of Meister Eckhart. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.